Good afternoon. I'm Mary Marvin, Mayor of the Village of Bronxville, and I'm here this afternoon with two gentlemen, Jerry Napolitano and Stuart Rabin, and we're here to talk about the upcoming fire district election, which is actually on December 13th from 2 to 9 p.m. And for villagers, I know you all vote right here in Village Hall. And gentlemen, I may have you, when we speak, refresh where our residents in Tuckahoe and Eastchester should vote as well. I did this last year, offered the candidates just a kind of get to know you interview, a little Q&A, and residents found it quite helpful. We actually put it on the cable channel for all of the communities because, as you gentlemen know, it's almost a $17 million budget. It's a bigger budget than the Village of Bronxville's budget and Mayor Steve Eklund's budget in Tuckahoe. So you were both gracious enough to just come in basically to fill in the residents of our town on the job and get to know you. So I think I'll start with Jerry. Jerry, you are the incumbent, having served, the terms are 5 people, and one is up every year because they're 5-year terms. So Jerry has served 5 years, and can you just start and tell us about yourself first?
Yeah, so I got involved being a commissioner even before I was running for election back in 2011. I actually was attending the board meetings probably 3 years before that because I felt that I could really make a difference. I've been working with public safety almost my entire career when it comes to radio communications and networks, and I've always done volunteer work for that community throughout my career. And I felt that I wanted to get interested in the community and what was going on in the fire service, and I was interested in showing up at the meetings every month in some cases, and I would give my opinion back then. And I thought even as a citizen I was making a difference, and then I was asked to step up and see if I'd be interested in being a commissioner, which I was really happy to do, and honored that people came up to me and asked me to run for commissioner. And so it's basically like 8 years for me really getting involved for the Eastchester Fire Department. And I feel I made some level of difference and change that we've had, particularly in the transparency end that we've had. But it's really about giving back. That's kind of why I wanted to do it, giving back to my community.
And your family lives here? You're
No, so my family, they don't live in the area. I grew up in the Bronx in New York, and then I moved into the Crestwood section, and then afterwards I moved into Eastchester when I had kids.
Okay.
So, no, I have relatives in other states.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Stuart, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us here today. You know, it's a great opportunity to be able to have a forum where our residents can find out who's running, what we're running for, what the district is about, what the issues are. So obviously, thank you, and thank you to Jerry for coming on such short notice. My name is Stuart Rabin, as you've announced. I've worked and lived in the town of Eastchester for a number of years. I think I'm going on my 11th year working for the town. I've lived in the town of Eastchester with my family and extended family for well over 30 years. Today, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to bring to the residents of Bronxville, and of course Tuckahoe and Eastchester if they happen to see it, my determination to make some real change to the board, to bring about some wonderful opportunities for us to do a great job in making our district better and most affordable. And my reason for running is I know that with my experience here working in municipal government, understanding the ideas around budgeting and finance and procurement, that I'll be able to take my years of experience and living in the town and knowing what's best for our community and roll that into an exceptional time working with the fire board and our residents.
Okay, thank you. And Jerry, what do you think your particular gentlemen were both so articulate in why you want to do it, and what skill set do you bring? Because there's a lot of people, frankly, that are so good and want to offer their time and talents, but certain certain skill sets are needed for certain jobs. And what do you bring to the table?
So well, I'm a degreed electrical and mechanical engineer, so we can start there. So my experience in public service has been working as a fire commissioner. But the experience that I bring is really understanding how local government works. Like I said, I've been doing that as part of my career in public safety communications, understanding the procurement process, understanding how budgets get allocated, understanding where, particularly when it comes to technology, where is the money available, right? If you look at most departments, particularly in the Northeast, 85% of a municipal's budget is pretty much people, personnel, benefits.
Right.
And then they only have a small amount of money to make improvements on technology facilities. So that's where I think I lend the most amount of talent when it comes to the technology component and bringing that all together to bring, you know, a good budget to the public and make them aware of what we can or can't do with the funds we have in the department.
Perfect. And Stuart, I'll ask you the same. What skill set are you going to bring to the table to enhance the board? You know, just like certain skill sets on zoning boards are different than fire boards, are different from planning boards. So what would you bring that would be a real plus to the fire board?
Well, I would say this. Working for a town, as I have for the past 11 years, and in the private sector before that, I've been able to have a serious experience in understanding the maintenance and the construction of properties, understanding the importance of what it takes to maintain facilities, to ensure that not only the employees are safe, but also the residents. Working in the private sector, again, and in municipal government, I've had exceptional experience in understanding how to budget, how to be cost effective, how to cut the fat, so to speak. My focus at this point is to be able to take that type of experience and roll it into the fire board on the board itself being a person of change. And I think with my skills, as far as being able to make the cuts where they have to be done, find accountability, increase transparency, increase communication. All of these skills are skills that I use every day in my role, in my personal life and my...
And what is your job for the audience? What do you do in the town of
I
Eastchester?
work for the Department of Buildings, Grounds, Parks, and Recreation. Basically, what we're responsible for is the maintenance and upkeep of all municipal properties, community programming, and the innovation of our buildings, our grounds, our facilities.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, back to you, having served for 5 years, what are you most proud of, and what would you continue? Like, I would love just to know what you thought happened during your 5 years and where you want to see the fire board go.
So for some of you at home, the fire board 5 years ago was very different. And what it is now has really transitioned, I think, when I came on board. Before that, there was some level of conflict, I guess, of board members on the Eastchester Fire Department. And since I've come on board, there's been a transition of fire commissioners that have less and less conflict and have been more and more willing to make change. For example, before I got on the board, the 5 members of the Board of Fire Commissioners weren't even looking over bills. They weren't even being accountable for bills that were being paid. They just assumed that if they were going to sign a warrant for $1.2 million every month, it was acceptable. So when I came on board, we made it a point of making sure that every commissioner reviewed every bill, from $35 to $700,000 for our pensions, for example, payments that we're making to the state. So I think that that's the value and awareness that I brought, and that was actually part of my campaign that I did 5 years ago. When it comes to technology, when I came on board, the department didn't have email, believe it or not. We didn't have any email, so we came up with a consolidated email. We didn't have any avenue to maintain documents in electronic form. It was all being done in paper. We transitioned the department now to be able to have an archive of all scanned-in, paperless, basically, environment when it comes to archiving some of our documents. And then we started along the path of improving some of our facilities. As many of you know, the firehouses of Sursa 1930 in most cases, and very old structures to maintain, weren't designed for some of the vehicles and apparatus that we have. So we were able to renovate Firehouse 5 all the way in the north end. We're in the process of renovating the firehouse in Chester Heights, in Eastchester, and we're also we also did some renovation at the Tuckahoe Firehouse, and soon also this one in Bronxville. So these are all things that I think I've created some momentum in the area. With the transition of the board within the last 5 years, we've been able to get a lot of things done. And I have a perspective of seeing that from when I was a citizen, 3 years before that, and then 5 years when I was on the board.
And what are your goals should you be reelected? What would you like to be doing for the next 5 years, looking down the road?
So continue that transparency. Hopefully we can make it even better than it is. We've tremendous grounds we've made there and as far as transparency goes compared to 5 years ago. FOIA responses are turned around quickly. People are not complaining that they don't know when the board meetings are on. It's available online at any time. People were complaining about not being notified of different things going on in the department when it comes to fire safety. We're able to do that. Hopefully moving forward we can continue down that path, make that even better, improve on that. We can continually pass budgets that are underneath the state cap requirement. And I really would want to focus on facilities. I think within the 5 years that I was here, honestly, I don't feel the board did as well as we could have because of a lot of distractions we were having on our legal front. Hopefully within the next 5 years we have a lot less distractions on the legal front, and maybe we can concentrate on improving the facilities of the firehouses.
Perfect. And Stuart, I would ask you what you would do as a fire commissioner. You were obviously motivated to run, and what are your goals for the next 5 years?
Absolutely. And just to piggyback a little bit on what Jerry's saying, I would want to first of all thank, obviously, Jerry for his service for the last 5 years, for sure, absolutely. It takes a lot for somebody to dedicate time in order to be on a board, and it's never easy, no matter what it is, whether it's a small board or a large board that, as you said, looks over a $16.5 million budget. And with that, I would say this. I really appreciate what you said before, Mayor. With transparency and budgeting, this is your budget.
Right.
Which is $14 million.
Right.
And this is the Village of Tuckahoe's budget, which is about $12 million. And the Town of Eastchester's, excluding the villages, is about $21 million. And then this is the fire district's budget, which is $16.5 million, which isn't transparent. So I would look to change this. That's number one. This is a $16.5 million budget. This is a 12. This is a 14. So there isn't as much transparency there. So that's one of the things I would fix.
Give an example of that?
Sure. In this budget, for example, let's look at the Town of Eastchester's budget. You know how many police officers work for the Town of Eastchester. You don't know how many firefighters work for the district fire department here. You see that there's one chief, but then you see a gross employment on uniformed firemen, 5 million. How many uniformed firemen? You don't know. It doesn't say. That's something that needs to be fixed. If you look at the FDNY budget of $1.82 billion, they tell you right on the front page, we have 10,790 firemen uniformed working. This budget for $16 million doesn't tell you that. It also doesn't tell you a lot of other things. This is one of the things I will change. I agree, transparency is necessary and warranted, especially when it comes to our budgeting. What I would like to add is our facilities. Absolutely, 100%. We have firehouses that are crumbling in our town. People have asked me as I've walked around town expressing my interest in joining the board, they asked me why I want to join, just like, what you want to do, why. But their whys aren't why should I vote for you? Why? What will you do? They want to know why I want to get involved in the first place. They're fed up. They're disenfranchised with what's happening. And it's tough as a resident, for being a resident of our town for as long as I have, to have many people on the street question what's the point. The demoralization of people's response to the fire district. Earlier you said asking people on the street questions, you weren't even confident they even know what the fire district does. I'll change that. That's what I'll do when people vote for me. I will change that. The fire district needs to go out into the community. They need to support the community. Those are a couple of things that I'll be looking to change. Budgetarily, again, yes. Men, firewomen, absolutely.
No, I should just, we're back and forth, but in fairness, Jerry, I should offer you an opportunity just to address Stuart's concern on transparency.
So I don't disagree, particularly the weight of those documents that he just displayed. But I'll tell you why that occurs, right? If you look at the number of full-time employees that we have in the Eastchester Fire District, that would be 71 firefighters. Out of those 71 firefighters, how many do you think are administrators? 3. So if you look at the amount of employees that we have in these towns and villages, and you look at how many administrative and support staff you have, it's substantially more. Then the fire district is a 7/24 operation. Towns and villages are not, with the exception of the police departments. So you have to consider that. So if you look at the overall budget, 85% of that is people and personnel. As a commissioner, do I want to increase the amount of front staff in the front office in order to produce a substantial amount of documents, to make that transparency, to bring in more people and more cost, or do we feel what we've been communicating is good enough? So that's the balance that we have as a commissioners. So the balance really ends up being is how the public is going to vocalize that. We have not had, up until today, a citizen say that they weren't satisfied with the amount of information that we were giving them as part of the budget. But I don't disagree with Stuart's comment about the detail that's in there. But we would basically have to hire, maybe a half-year person to put such a budget together. We do have detailed line items. It's all done on QuickBooks, and we do it in an automated process. But I'd say it doesn't have the fluff of some of these, because we don't really have a capital plan for the fire department, because the majority of that is health benefits and the firefighters, right? So it's a little bit different model. The only thing I would say is maybe if you were to take out the police component of that village or town budget and see, the details of that, because we are only we're only fire prevention, we're only firematics, right? If you look at a town budget, it has to do with services, public works, the libraries, the parks. So it ends up needing that much more detail, even though the dollars aren't there. Okay. So we're kind of in a shortfall because we're 7/24. We have a substantial amount of resources to support the public, but yet if you look at the front office staff, they're effectively part-timers. We don't have anyone in the front staff that does 40 hours right now. They're all 20 hours. So if we had someone who was doing maybe 2 or 3 people that were doing 4 hours a week, I agree. We definitely would be able to put something together like that. But that's the balance, that as commissioners, we're trying to bring the most amount of value to the citizens.
But you do have a paid treasurer.
Correct. Who's
responsible for putting the budget together.
Which is part-time.
But their part-time job is year-round.
Correct.
So a budget that is transparent, that shows the revenue and how our money and our tax dollars are spent, and how an $8 million fund balance can be kept on the side and a capital budget could potentially be put together, could be done within 365 days, I would presume, even by somebody who works 4 hours a day.
If it's priority, yes.
Well, it should be priority.
So like you brought up the FDN wire budget you held up there, that was almost the same thickness of ours.
No, it was thicker.
By about 4 sheets.
That is not their budget. That's just the summary of their budget.
Well, that's
your
all ours.
Summary from your budget doesn't even tell you how many firemen are being employed.
That's
Do you
all
want to
ours
see the
is.
Summary from this year's budget? You can look at it. It doesn't say how many firemen you have.
There is a
You
detailed
said
one that gets
71.
quantity.
I would say, okay, 71 firemen. I would love to see where that's listed, because it's not. Your audits, your last audit on your website is from 2012.
The state audit? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the 2015 audit.
Yeah,
So you don't put
they
that
don't do that
together,
on-
you hire a firm to do that. Your 2012 audit shows a fund balance of $5 million. Your 2015 audit shows a fund balance of $8 million. The residents don't know that.
Yeah,
The
so I mean,
residents need to know.
Stuart, it really has to do with the amount of time that some of us can put into this. Remember,
But you're not doing the audit. It takes no time to scan and upload. That's what you ran on. You've uploaded the 2012 audit. You can scan and upload the 2015
the audits are
audit.
completely transparent at the state level anywhere.
They're not on your website. And they're also not filed with the town, which you're required to file by law because your revenue is greater than $300,000 per year. And you've never stamped in an audit with the town like you do a budget. But you're required to. No, you have not.
Okay.
You've never stamped in an audit. And you're also supposed to stamp in an audit possibly with the Village of Bronxville as well. And you haven't done it. But it is required. And that is transparency. And that is a no-brainer as an elected official if you're running on transparency to file these audits so that people can see how you're spending the money or not spending the money, which seems to be the case here. We have an $8 million fund balance of unused resources, yet we've asked for more money from our taxpayers every year for a budget. Regardless, if it's 85% for employees and benefits and health, we understand that. Then you need to cut from that 15% in order to help the residents out.
Well, it brings me back to talking about a fund balance. The district, my understanding, is planning to buy 3 new fire engines.
Correct, yeah.
And the exterior restoration at Chester Heights. So how are you funding these? Because those are huge expenses.
Yeah, so that's part of our house and apparatus fund that we've
Okay.
allocated.
And is that, and you have, so you'll be able to purchase
Yeah,
that?
we're actually holding off on some costs because of some shortfall that might have occurred because of final year averaging in part of our negotiations that we were having with the union.
Okay,
So now that we've settled that contract, we now have that to spend
okay.
because we don't have to incur that. We might have been having a close to a $77.1 million shortfall. We could have.
You could have,
Could
but
have.
you
We
have,
settled that, and that's no longer a risk item.
so you have a settled contract with the
With the
fire
union, fire
department?
department.
Okay. And you indeed have an $8 million,
Correct.
and that money is earmarked in any way, or?
Well, the primary things are the apparatus and the revitalization of the Chester Heights Firehouse.
Okay, and you will use the fund balance?
Yeah, I think there'll be some left over, but yes.
Okay. And Stuart, would you use that money and pay your bills up front, kind of?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Mayor.
Yeah.
I would say that if you have the fund balance, then you should use some of it because it's taxpayer money and they've already invested this money into their district, but have not seen anything bought with it, hence the reason why you have it. I would say this. I don't believe that an employment contract or a potential lawsuit involving the lowball payment of pensions for several years by a fire district to their retirees is any reason for us to have a fleet of trucks that are falling apart, that 3 have to be bought at once. I would also say that the crumbling Chester Heights Firehouse, which you can see the 88-page report even on their website. So they are transparent and they put the report up there. They just don't bring any attention to it. But there is an 88-page report by FSSI of the inspection of the Chester Heights Firehouse, whose floor fell in 2 weeks ago, by the way. That condition of that building is appalling and quite a disappointment. Because the question should not be whether or not any part or whole of that fund balance should be used for the repair or the purchase of apparatus. The question is, why has it been sitting there for 10 years and not used to buy apparatus earlier? You don't buy apparatus 3 at a time. When all 3 of them go out of service, what do? You buy 3 again. What you should do is stagger your purchasing. If the fire board had a procurement policy that was able to be seen or drafted properly, it would probably tell you that your fleet should be flipped every 2 to 3 years in order to keep all vehicles fresh. Now we have an engine which is 28 years old. I don't know if you drive a 28-year-old car or a fire truck that's 28, but our firemen do. And that fire truck, I assume, is going to be replaced. I can't be sure. I assume it's going to be replaced. You're going to buy 3 trucks. And you're going to repair Chester Heights, so to speak, out of this fund balance. Isn't it better, or perhaps at least worth the conversation, to see if borrowing some money at a low percentage that the fire district could in fact be available to receive would be better for the residents so that we don't expend this entire fund balance that they've spent so much time blatantly hiding than to spend it all at once? Why don't we maybe perhaps consider borrowing a little bit, pay a little bit over time, not remove a majority of our fund balance and then not have it there in case something really terrible should happen. Our Chester Heights firehouse is in such disrepair. There was a fire in the firehouse. It's embarrassing to have a fire in a firehouse. And it's hard to not even allow or be able to have children who are playing at Little League next door to go in and even use the facilities in an emergency, because there's a question whether or not they should come into the firehouse because of its condition. My opinion is that we should learn to look to use shared services to help do the best for our residents as far as affording them the best possible fire district. I think perhaps if Mr. Napolitano is reserved to the idea that they don't employ enough administrative help to make a budget, then maybe, you know, working out a plan with the Bronxville treasurer or the Tuckahoe town comptroller or the Village of Tuckahoe to share some services that way. Perhaps we need to look at highways, our highway departments. We have cracked pavement, that's all in that report, that we could probably work out some great bid opportunities for purchasing blacktop together or purchasing sidewalk repair together. The schools in the town are involved with all of their various construction projects and bids. I think these are all opportunities that we can do, maybe not to completely flush out our fund balance. It's great to have money. When I attended the November meeting, I was told that it was cash. There is no capital budget. And the apparatus line in their 2017 adopted budget is about $250,000. So that's not going to buy us anything in the line. It's got to be all this cash.
It's sort of in, not defense of the municipalities, but we're all so short-staffed that I'm so overworking my treasurer. She's still here after getting here. It's hard to share people that are already doing incredibly long jobs themselves, you know. So,
yeah, I would understand that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't eliminate the responsibility. It would have to get done. See, that might be the difference with how I am. I get the job done. My focus is making sure that in this situation, that the residents know what they're paying for. They don't know. And there's not going to be a well enough explained reasoning as to why that can't be done. If you as a fire board commissioner need to put in the extra time, then you do it. These administrative services that they pay for in the firehouse, non-fireman personnel who would be responsible for this, they're eligible to earn overtime. So, and that's how they're hired, you know, their salary of either $35 and $63 an hour, full paid benefits, paid sick, paid vacation, which is unusual for a municipality to offer health benefits to part-time employees, but they do. And if they can afford it, great. But if you're going to be able to pay overtime, then wouldn't the overtime be best spent on projects that would benefit the resident? That's what I believe.
and Jerry, thank you, Stuart, and I interrupted Jerry, so back to, do you want to address, you know, the fund balance, the issue of health care for part-time people that I wasn't aware of?
Yeah, so if you put in 20 hours, you're required to offer them health care, so that's actually legally required. Okay. And actually pension as well. So, and that's part of the state requirements that we have in place. But, I mean, I don't disagree with what Stuart's saying. All I can tell you is 5 years ago. If you think this is bad, Stuart, you should have been around 5, maybe 8 years ago. And progress has been slow, and I'm not making excuses for the board. The board is volunteer. Majority of everyone, well, actually a minority now, don't have full-time positions. So it's basically something that they're doing to serve their public because they're retired. Myself and Steve Baker, for example, have full-time positions. And this ends up being approximately anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a week that we're putting in to be a fire commissioner. But I really think it has to do with the type of government when it comes to towns and villages versus what's going on in the fire district. We're very similar to a school district, right? If you look at the school board, they're volunteers, right? The same things that you're echoing always seem to echo during a school board meeting about being more and more transparent. And as more and more citizens bring it to the board's attention and bring it front center with them, they will act. It's unfortunately that maybe you're the only one who's brought it to our attention right now about this, but if there was more people in the public, if you were here maybe years before you decided to run for commissioner and we're bringing that, I guarantee you as a board we would have made the difference. And the board we have now would have been effectively there. So I'm not making any excuses, but the more public voice what they want, the more we will change, right? Because like I said, it's not a full-time position that we're doing, it's volunteer. We're all here to do the right thing. So I don't disagree with what Stuart's saying.
I mean, just a little bit, I understand you have changed the auditor, you've changed the law firm,
Yeah,
you've changed
we've
the
had.
accountants, just from what I watch. So let's just change gears a little on, other issues. One issue very, self-interest is this whole fire hydrant maintenance issue, which, just for the audience, the Village of Tuckahoe and the Village of Bronxville decided we were all paying for the maintenance of fire hydrants only if you were a property tax payer. So I give an example, not to pick on Lawrence Hospital, which I'm very lucky to have in this village, but the senior citizen living in a studio in Midland Gardens was contributing towards the effectiveness and maintenance of the fire hydrant, while the entire hospital was not contributing, and I'm sure would honestly want to make sure that the hydrants were working. Eastchester did not vote that way. Eastchester has left the cost of maintaining all fire departments not as a user fee, but as a property tax owner. So I'd be interested in your view, and also a view the town of Eastchester has actually filed a lawsuit against the Eastchester Fire District over this very issue. And I just wondered, because that's an issue my residents frankly have seemed to understand as property taxpayers because it's so tangible. And Stuart, I just wondered what your thoughts were.
I'll be more than happy to comment that. I mean, Commissioner Winters has now joined us. I remember speaking to him several weeks ago and saying when it comes to lawsuits, considering how suit-happy the board has been over the last 10 years, being a defendant in 1 out of 5 suits is a pretty good average, considering the rest of them, they're the plaintiff. This one, they're the defendant. I think that everybody here in the town as residents expect their government to run effectually as a fair and understanding body. I really do. I believe that. And, that's the way I would intend to govern, fair and understanding. I believe that, to the best of my knowledge, the town has extended in the past the opportunity to sit down with the board. So there hasn't been a straight lawsuit. There was a time for communication. And if you look up online, actually, you can see the electronic filing of every single motion, answer, exhibit, everything on the e-court. And if you'd like to, I can give you the number for that. So I've been able to read up on what an attorney for the fire district would submit, what a town attorney would submit, or the representation of that. And I have read the law. Actually, I do have it right here, and I've highlighted some parts of it too, the law that was introduced by Amy Paulin. And I know, like you said, the Village of Bronxville went forward and pushed those costs, onto the residents. The Village of Tuckahoe did as well.
Right. Took them off the residents and shared them with all the tax exempt and the non-for-profits.
Right, and it's going on to their utility bill.
Exactly.
So the schools are now paying for
Yes,
that.
every non.
So the residents in the villages, their school is paying for their hydrant tax, and the residents are paying for their hydrant tax, and the residents are paying school taxes. So it's all in there, right?
Yeah,
So,
and the hospitals,
right,
and
right.
in our case, a college.
Right. So, and I guess my impression is of the way that the law was written, the levies in the villages were lowered to reflect that the town would not be collecting that money from the hydrants from the residents. So that money is now being paid directly by the residents to the Suez or United Water, depending how comfortable you are with the name change at this point, that they would be paying that. I believe also that the town is only asking for the fire district to pay money for those hydrants, those 445 hydrants that are within the town itself. And I know that there's probably been a little bit of a spin or a difference of opinion about where money comes from. Is money that's collected by the town from all three jurisdictions being used to pay for resident hydrants and therefore, I'm sorry, Town of Eastchester resident hydrants, and therefore giving them a quote-unquote free ride, is what I've seen in some of the documents passed on. Maybe not that loose, but basically that's what it was. And you know what? It's a very, very, very convoluted situation. And I think that what is best for us as a resident of the Town of Eastchester, resident of the Village of Bronxville, resident of Eastchester, residents of Tuckahoe, is certainly for everyone to sit down. I do not believe that anybody is being double taxed. I think there's probably a difference of opinion about how that money is collected and then paid out. I think it's worth the conversation. I don't believe that there's a double tax. I do believe that if you have a town-wide fire district, you do not want to have only money collected in the Village of Bronxville to cover only Village of Bronxville fires. I think that's for sure, because I don't know how well the Village of Bronx will be able to do just utilizing the money from the fire district's village budget versus from the town-wide. I think there's a larger conversation to be had, and that's exactly what I do. I communicate. I think we need to mediate. I'll agree with you. I'm not fans of lawsuits. I think a lot of this could be taken care of by having a conversation, but that requires two sides to come together and speak. I have a letter from the supervisor that I printed off of that same website calling for a meeting, and I have an answer saying, we're not having that meeting. Well, that could have been the problem. That was all the way back in 2015. We're more than a year later. This could have been resolved, I believe, and I think it will be resolved. I think there's no way that the town or the district can go on penalizing the residents to go back and forth. There's over $100,000 of legal bills having been expended between the fire district and the town. I'm certain of it. We don't need that. That's not what we're about in Eastchester. But I do not believe that the Village of Bronxville or the Village of Tuckahoe is being double taxed. I think there has to be a stronger argument for a mediation and an understanding for people to come together and make sure that what's being done is being done by the letter of the law and not by the way they would like it to be read.
Okay. And again, Mr. Napolitano, the whole issue of your thoughts on both the hydrant issues and Stuart's thoughts on
So, I mean, I'll try to summarize. It's a very complicated issue. It's not simple. So, first of all, $120,000 in legal fees, no. Actually, $120,000 in a single line item in the Eastchester budget is not there, which would be the shortfall if the Eastchester Fire Department paid for those hydrants. And as soon as we would pay them as the fire department, yes, then it would double tax the residents of Tuckahoe and Bronxville. Since we have not, there is no double tax. That's the issue. So the way this municipal tax came about was, if you look at your utility bill or your electric bill, you get charged for a delivery fee of your electricity. Suez is basically saying this is a delivery fee for basically delivering water to the hydrants that you're being used as a citizen. In the past, that was paid on the general taxes in each town or village. Through the AMB-POLA legislation, towns and villages were allowed to give that charge directly to each individual water meter, right? So anywhere there was a meter, you would get charged a municipal water fee, right, which then subsidizes the hydrants. The mayor of Bronxville and the mayor of Tuckahoe decided to push that meter fee to the residents, making it simpler, actually, for the residents. The town of Eastchester decided not to. They decided to keep it the old way, and the old way that we actually cannot find where this old way started when we've gone into our archives back to 1928. So basically what it comes down to, things have changed, laws have changed. There's no reason for the Eastchester Fire Department to continually pay this 28% tax on fire hydrants that no municipality can find where this agreement was, in writing, legally, or verbally. So things change. Laws change. We, as a board, decided that if we continually paid that 28% subsidy into Eastchester, we would disenfranchise the residents of Tuckahoe and Eastchester because of that. So it's really that simple. If the town of Eastchester would have just decided in the same way Tuckahoe and Bronxville did, we wouldn't have this issue, right? And if you were going to look at the Eastchester budget, I would think that $120,000 line item, which is we calculated to be about the shortfall that we're talking about, this 28% of fire hydrants, would be a line item in the budget. It's not there. So it must be somewhere in the general fund.
Okay.
Let me ask you, though, if I may. Did you, as the fire board, send a notice to the town board or the town comptroller that you would not be paying this money? Was it just erased out of a budget after it was put in there? Was it put into the budget?
As soon as we said we were not going to pay it, we took it off our budget.
So, if I may, Mayor, if you have a 60 to 70-year understanding to pay money, would you just say we're not paying it anymore? Or would you sit down with them and say, these are the reasons why we're not paying it? This is what we have a question with. This is what we need to talk about. As a municipal leader, I would assume that if you have it in your budget to pay $100,000 like you have for the last 60 years to the town, regardless of whether or not the agreement was tangible in your hand or not, the very least you would do was pick up the phone and say, we need to have a meeting and discuss this. I don't believe that we should continue paying this. Instead, what transpired was it was put into the budget, and then once the tax money was collected by the fire district from the town, they just said, oh, we're not paying it. Then why was it in the budget to begin with?
Mr. Napolitano.
So we never found that, and that's how this came about. We could not, you got to remember the board changes. We have to go into our archive, and when we went to an archive, we couldn't find any legal reason why we were paying that.
But my question is, if you're going to put it in your budget to collect that money from the town, why would you collect it as a hydrant fee and then not pay it?
We were only putting it in the budget before this Amy Prola legislation came out. After that, we did not.
What happened to the money?
We didn't charge the taxpayers for it.
No, it was collected by the town and then paid to the fire district. What happened to the money?
It was not collected by the town and wasn't paid to the fire district. It's in the Eastchester town budget. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's that $120,000 shortfall.
We're going back to about 2014.
Before the legislation or after?
I believe, well, 2014, this legislation was in 2013. Did you collect hydrant fees from the town of Eastchester after legislation was passed?
No.
Are you sure about that? And you did not collect money and then not have it paid out?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, it goes to, you've been so courteous to sit here with me, and I'm mindful of your time. Just two quick questions, or they're big questions, but if you have some points. Number one, we're having this whole discussion. How do we get, Mr. Napolitano, ideas of how do we get our citizens more interested in the fire district budget? I mean, in fairness, I grapple with a $14 million budget that I wish people were more interested in, because sometimes when they do step up, we find out things we could be doing better, or things we're doing that people, frankly, don't want me to spend the money on.
I mean, as board members, sometimes you get a feeling, I know I have, I mean, I'm new in government. You know, citizens could look at us up here and say we're in front of a glass house, but I mean, if they do, they need to come and throw stones. They need to come and tell us some way we can do it better. There's a lot of smart people in our community, and I might be an expert at some component, and another commission might be at a different one, and we have a substantial amount of people in our community. We had Mr. Wolf, for example. He used to come to every one of our meetings. He's passed away. He used to challenge us every time, and there was not a board member that wouldn't want him to come to our meeting to challenge us, because we needed to be challenged. It's not that we just sit up here, we're volunteers, no one on the board has any self-interest right now, so there's nothing that we're doing out of self-interest, right? It is really to give back to the public, but we do need people to throw some stones at this glass house every once in a while. I think that's good for government, and that's what government is about, being able to challenge, right, so that people do better, so that they know what people want to hear and what they want, right? So I think that needs to continue. Come to the meetings. Leverage as much as you can any of this media that we're trying to share with you as much as we can. Please do that. We're trying our best there. So. Okay.
And Stuart, how would you get more people interested in, frankly, $17 million of their money?
That's a wonderful question. It really is. And I think it starts with setting the example. If you're going to have a special meeting on a Friday night at 6:45 p.m., you can't also hem and haw that people don't show up. You need to do a better job of having a regular scheduled meeting every month. It is the responsibility of an elected official to make it to a meeting, not for the board to alter its calendar every month to make the needs of a few met. It's the other way around. That's what you're charged with for a regular meeting. Special meetings, if you go ahead and you have them here and there, that's understandable if they're special. But you need to have regular fire board meetings. Their bylaws indicate that they're supposed to have a meeting the second Thursday of every month. That rarely happens, except if someone like, let's say myself, is going to probably show up the meeting before the election, then it's going to be on the second Thursday of the month because that's when they're supposed to have it. But the meeting before that, Tuesday, their budget was approved on October 18th of 2016. That was a Tuesday. That's not a regular budget day. That's what you need to do. There needs to be more transparency in how the residents are able to access the fire district. Having an election, maybe perhaps they should move their election like they've been saying, move it to May. That's when your school board elections are. These are nonpartisan elections. They don't belong in November. Have it in May. You want to have people more involved with your budget? Try and piggyback onto other issues and other times of the year that brings attention to your budget, to your fire district, and what you're doing.
Okay, so
So all these issues that Stuart has brought up, we have brought up as a board in the last 5 years. We tried actually piggybacking. We went all the way to the state. We got state laws changed during the last 5 years, but it ended up being stagnant when it got to the Board of Elections here in Westchester County.
Well, that's
we
because
have
the
done
law wasn't written properly. It doesn't describe who's going to pay for your elections, how are your ballots going to be done, are you using the same machines. The law may have been passed that would allow you to move it, but no law has been structured to tell you how you're going to do it. And that's what everyone else depends on, election law. There's no election law that properly tells the fire district how they can afford their own budget for their election. Is it going to piggyback on the county? Is the County Board of Elections going to provide you the same machines?
So how do you propose this? How do you propose to do it differently than the present board has done it right now?
I would say try and look into, have you spoken to the Board of Elections?
Yes.
And what have they said as
We
far
had a
as?
consultant actually.
No, but
evaluate.
have you spoken to the Board of Elections to actually move it? Is there legislation? Your fire district seems to be very close with people in the state assembly, Amy Paulin, George Latimer, I mean, the Town of Eastchester, the Village
had
of
the support of Latimer.
Bronxville. But what I'm questioning is, if you need information or there's required to be information somewhere set forth to allow you to do these things, then you need to go and proactively get them done.
Do you think we didn't?
I don't know if you have or not. I don't believe the board is transparent enough to give me that answer.
Actually, you don't have to be the board. Any one of our meetings that we've always talked to, actually, maybe even too much in our public board meetings. So we've done all that you've spoken about. It's just a matter of the political machine and the government machine on why it's taking so long.
All right.
And there's not many communities in the state of New York that actually don't vote in the month of December, other than beach communities, believe it or not. I was surprised to see that. I thought there was a lot more. But when we went to go investigate at the state level, there's really only some beach communities that are shut down during the winter months. That's the only time they don't have fire commissioner elections. But we're trying. I mean, we still continually try to change that date. And it's a matter of managing the focus of what priorities are as the board, right? You know, we have some time, we'll focus on the election. We have some time, we're going to focus on renovations. We have some time, we're going to focus on some of these lawsuits that are being served on us. So it's a balance. It's a very difficult balance because, like, we're not full-time commissioners. And I think if you are elected as a commissioner, you're going to be forced with that same balance challenge of what the priorities are. And what you can do to be the most effective for the citizens versus the amount of time you have. And that's what's difficult, and that's true of a school board, that's true of a fire board. It might not be different for village, board members, for example, who are effectively quasi-full-time employees that are doing that, because they could focus on it, right? My focus isn't primarily the fire district. My focus is a full-time position, bringing home the eggs and bacon for my family to go to school, and then this is something that I'm doing on top of that for my community as much as I can. So that's what's a little bit different.
Well, it's definitely different because my full-time responsibility will be making sure that this fire district runs the way it needs to be and the way it should be and the way our residents need it to be for their tax dollars. I believe that
So
there's...
will you work full-time like
I do.
Mr. Yeah,
I
like
do work
Mr.
full-time.
Napolitano?
I do. I
Okay.
certainly work full-time. In fact, I work more than one job.
Okay.
Full-time and then several other part-times. But there's nothing that's going to stop me from being able to make the change necessary to this district to ensure that moving forward, it does everything it needs to do to be the best possible provider of safety while also being the most affordable. And that's why if I have to, or I will, work any hours necessary in order to get that done, there's no room for excuses. It needs to get done, and therefore it has to get done. And that's the way I am.
So, I mean, before I decided to run for re-election, I reached out to the community and asked if someone was willing to take on my position. And the feedback that I got was no one wanted to step up. So I didn't even know about you, for example.
So you didn't ask me.
I didn't even know about you, so it doesn't, but I did reach out to the community, and the community that I reach out are the people who come to the meeting, the community, the people who are here on a regular basis and want to make a difference.
The same people who are not here are the people that come to the meeting regularly? We just discussed how there isn't enough people taking
Well, this isn't a
an
public
interest.
meeting.
Well, even your public meetings. At the public meeting I went to in November, Commissioner Winters mentioned that it was the first time he had seen me, and there was a reporter there who's very rarely there, though he's in most of your YouTube videos, and there was some representative from the union, a union member, and a volunteer, and Mr. Andrus, and then your immediate employees. That is the general attendance of your meetings. And so unless you ask people who are currently on the fire board to be
So we get
interested
people
in
at the
your point.
meetings, we get correspondence, we'll get emails. from some
Okay,
of
so
these
you've
people who
reached
are
out to
interested.
more than just people who attend the
Yeah,
meeting?
more than just people that attend the meeting, but yeah, I mean, and those are the people that are front-facing to us, that we see the most.
Okay.
How about, because I, again, want to make this a nice, concise, because I'd love the audience to, frankly, watch it from beginning to end, because it's so important. So my last question is just, do you have thoughts? I think the most important thing are all our taxpayers pay a great deal of taxes. It's obviously not an understatement. Do you think... Mr. Napolitano, do you think what should or could the district do to manage operating costs more effectively? Give me an idea of things that you think could be changed, or do you feel like it's moved, we're at a spot where it's effective? Your thoughts?
So I think based on where we are right now, and based on what the public is comfortable with when it comes to fire protection, right? I think we're at a good point. There's not much we could do as a fire board other than, and I would not want to do this, is reduce the number of firehouses in our in our district, right? That's not my goal. That's not my goal that I came on board, because I think our community is very comfortable with our response. We have an ISO rating of 2, which is the top 2% in the country, and I think we need to keep it that way. But I think, along what Stuart said, I think if we could do a lot more when it comes to shared services, there is a lot to gain there. Maybe we should start focusing a little bit more on shared services. I think that could be a very good avenue to save money overall. I mean, I would, one thing that I like to bring up when I speak to citizens is, do you know how much you're paying for fire tax? And believe it or not, 9 out of 10 people do not know. Mm-hmm. Because it gets wrapped into their regular tax bill, even though it's a line item in the little card that comes in. So, for example, I pay $1,800 on fire taxes, right? We have people in Bronxville that are paying $30,000 alone in fire taxes. Mm-hmm. So it's something that someone needs to be aware of and needs to be, want to make a difference. And I think the way we are right now, the way we're going to save money over time, I think, is through shared services, maybe looking at different ways to save money on maybe some of our insurance premiums, things of that nature, maybe getting some more efficient firehouses so we don't have to incur the cost of energy, which is part of our goal in Chester Heights. Those are the main areas that I think we can make some differences and move the bar a little bit, but not a 20% savings, no, but yeah.
Okay, and Mr. Rabin, your thoughts on, should or could there be more, what could be cost effective?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I thank Jerry for, promoting what I've said here tonight. I appreciate it. On top of that, the main issue whenever it comes to an election, especially in Westchester, is taxes. Taxes are the most important thing. Our middle class is shrinking 24% of our middle class is living paycheck to paycheck. They're a flat tire or a broken toilet away from complete financial devastation. The most important thing that we can do here in our town, in our fire district, is to, again, make it the safest and also the most affordable. There is quite a bit of fat to cut when it comes to our budget. Administratively, we're going to be potentially hiring a fire district manager whose roles and guidelines is basically the same as the previously demoted deputy chief, and their other responsibilities seem to be also the responsibilities of the fire board. So I don't know if we're hiring somebody to take over some of the weight that the fire board should actually be handling themselves. If there's a situation where the board itself is not able to do their job, then maybe the residents have to severely think that the people in the role are not appropriate anymore to be serving that. Cutting the costs of our fire district is of the utmost importance. I understand that you have an 85% part of your budget right now that is salaries, health care. These are all normal. These are normal. And whether, depending on what side of the fence you're on, it's either fortunate or unfortunate. But when you're a taxpayer, it's unfortunate. But that's the world we live in. What we need to do is to work better in finding ways to do more with less on that 15%. Shared services, absolutely. Perhaps we need to look into joining into a piggyback agreement with our other villages or school districts and insurance, for sure. There's a possibility there to talk to, per se, the Town of Eastchester, the Village of Bronxville, try and see whether or not an insurance premium could be reduced by going in together. We talked about blacktop, sure. We talked about elections. There's even a shared cost right there that we can help. I think this election is going to cost the district more than $7,000 to actually have an election. That's a big cost. It's a big cost.
So do you, in essence, because I've had you here for an hour, and I'm, in essence, one or two sentences, why on Tuesday the 13th, kind of put you both on the spot,
Sure.
just in a small soundbite, why should people come out, and they all should come out and vote? And I would ask your help, either of you gentlemen, to tell me again, I know all of Bronxville's residents vote right here in Village Hall. Tuckahoe residents vote?
Tuckahoe Village Center, Town Center.
Community center.
The community center. Everyone in Tuckahoe.
Eastchester City Hall.
Okay,
We have Chester Heights Firehouse,
okay,
and we have Leroy Gregory on the north side of
okay.
Eastchester.
So all total, Bronxville citizens vote in one place, Tuckahoe residents vote in one place, and Eastchester, depending on where you live, there are 3 different places to vote.
And if you go to the eastchesterfd.com site, there is an election folder that all that information is in there.
Okay, and the election is 2 to 9 p.m.,
Correct.
correct? On Tuesday, the 13th. It's so important that, Stuart, just a quick soundbite. Why vote for Stuart Rabin?
Well, I'll tell you. I am the candidate who is here who's going to bring change to the board, a much-needed change. My interest in being able to be more cost-effective with our budget, understanding that the integrity and the maintenance of our buildings, of our facilities, of our apparatus, needs to be something that has to be planned for. We need to focus more on committee-based planning, not Band-Aid repairs or last-minute fund balance expenditures. So if you want the more cost-effective, budget-minded, resident-focused candidate, then that would be me.
Thank you. And Jerry, the same thing?
So, like I said, I mean, if the community is very happy with the performance I've done in the 5 years, I promise you I'll continue down that same path. I really feel that 5 years ago, we did turn the board from what it used to be, and I enjoyed that momentum, and I would like to continue that momentum. And please come out and vote, no matter who you vote for. I know it might be a cold night, but please come out Tuesday the 13th and place your vote. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and I thank both of you gentlemen. This has
Thank you
been
so much.
so informative, and I appreciate the fact, you know, it's very hard just to ask questions and not allow the other person, and so your interjections were so helpful and appropriate, and And frankly, I've learned a lot. So I thank you for your time, and I thank both of you for offering yourself up again. As a volunteer, I understand exactly what you do, and I applaud both of you. And very much, and again, thank you for being here today.
Very much for having
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it was really nice for me. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.